I must survive. On June 17th of December 2021, I continued to slow my pace and finally came to a stop. It was down in a country village where even the buses didn't run frequently. The entire village was blanketed on the luminous snow that had fallen all night. The trees were hunched up like massive white fists and shed hair like snow every time the wind blew. I knew without looking back that I was the only one leaving footprints across the snowfield in the village. Both of my feet had long been soaking wet because of the cracked soles of my sneakers. I once heard the saying that God makes us lonely to lead us to Him. But I was not lonely. I was not following the path towards myself. It was a retreat. I was running away from myself. My family arrived in this village last fall. The amount of belongings we brought continued to get smaller each time we moved to a new town. Now we only needed a small delivery van to move. We were in no position to be picky about where we lived. There were only two conditions. One was a hospital food ad, and the other was an employer who was willing to hire someone without a high school diploma. This village had both. The bus that ran twice a day stopped in front of the country-run hospital, in a series of small eateries lined the stream behind the town. These eateries sold stew and fries, made with small fish caught from the stream, and the summer months were their high season. Crowds seeking a water-sized concoction poured in from nearby cities, and the demand for deliveries to those staying at the village with the rest area on the mountainous ridge was high. During winter, when the stream froze solid, the eateries used preserved fish caught in summer. There were not as many tourists as in the summer, but calls for delivery remained steady. I was one of the town's delivery boys. Of course, there was competition here too. Most of the households subsisted on farming, and, as can be guessed, were not that wealthy. Delivery service was the only part-time job available for the boys in town. Eatery owners made us compete against each other. Isn't it natural that I hire whoever impresses me the most? For them, it didn't matter that we were minors and didn't have driver's licenses. The boys who had already been hired acted very territorial. There were only a few, but they threatened me with house hazing. During vacation, the competition became fiercer. We voluntarily and competitively ran errands and took out the trash for the owners. The connivance only drove us farther, and yet, almost unexpectedly, we came to develop a sort of solidarity among us. We were rivals, but we had a sort of sympathy for one another. If one of us didn't show up, the rest wondered what had happened. They also reminded me of the time I spent in that classroom turned storage room at high school. Some of them were similar to Jungi, and some to Jimin. I couldn't help but wonder, if my friends for school had met me here in this village, would we have competed against and tried to outrival each other? If I had met these delivery boys at school, would we have become friends? Snow fell heavily when our competition, territorial instincts, and strange sense of solidarity all reached their peaks. Then the competition subsided instantly. A motor scooter was a must to make deliveries to the village with the rest area. But it was very dangerous to ride a lightweight motorbike along the snow-covered mountainous trail. The trail that led to the village with the rest area was steep and winding. Delivering on foot was not an option. In the end, it was a showdown between Taeyang and me. Taeyang was 2 years younger and lived on the outskirts of the village near the orchard. Taeyang wasn't his real name. It was either Jong-sik or Jonhan, but he reminded me of Taeyang. He didn't have that silly smile or easily open up to anyone with his gentle, naive nature. Rather, he always seemed aggressive, angry, and discontent. On the outside, he appeared similar to Jungi, but oddly enough, he reminded me more of Taeyang. Taeyang and I were the only ones richly poor enough to take the risk and keep making deliveries up to that snow-covered mountain town. It was the same that day, when yet another order was phoned into the eatery. I was roaming around along the stream. No one else had shopped out, as the weather report forecast heavy snow in the afternoon. Taeyang appeared a few minutes later. Instead of going into the eatery and chatting as usual, he just flopped down on the ground near the bridge and didn't move. It was one of those days when his face was cut and bruised, those days when his eyes were bloodshot and his clothes were stained with blood. Was something wrong with him? Was someone hitting him? I didn't ask. It began to snow while I was waiting for the food to be prepared. At the same moment, I felt something cold brush against my neck. The snow began falling thicker and heavier. "Are you sure it'll be okay?" The owner stuck his head out. Taeyang sprang to his feet, and I turned my face towards him. "Of course," we both answered simultaneously. "You never know how much more snow will fall from that kind of sky," said someone inside the eatery. "It just began to fall. I'll be back in a minute." The owner looked into my face with a doubtful stare. "But you're still not so good at driving the scooter." Taeyang came over, saying he had ridden the scooter many times. The owner clicked his tongue when he saw his face. "No, not you today. You go rest." I didn't miss my opportunity and jumped in. There's a first time for everything. Today is the first day I make a delivery in the snow. You know I'm very cautious. The owner gave in. "Come in here. You'll have to make quite a few round trips, so be careful." I could feel Taeyang's gaze following me behind my back as I stepped into the eatery. He hovered around me while I packed the prepared food and put it into the container. It was odd. Taeyang was usually too proud to act like this. When I looked back at him, he took a step towards me as if he had something to say. Then he turned away again. The owner kept nagging me about driving on a snow-covered road. I pretended to listen enthusiastically, nodding my head. Driving a scooter wasn't something that required so much attention, skill, and stress. Contrary to what I had thought, it wasn't easy climbing the slope through snow flurries on the scooter. The snow hadn't begun sticking on the road, but my nerves were on edge because it was flying in every direction in heavy flakes. The creeping scooter struggled up the slope. It was as if the scooter was clinging onto me. It was cold, but I was dripping with sweat and all my muscles tightened. The next minute, my sweat dried and I felt a chill on my back. I kept repeating a thought to myself. I had gone up and down this road without any problems on fall and up until early winter. Besides, the snow is not sticking and the road is not slippery. The scooter slipped helplessly on my way down during the third trip. I had just started to gain confidence and think that I was pretty good at maneuvering the scooter on a snowy day. As the snow had been falling for a while and the road had little traffic, it began to pile up here and there, but it was still okay in the center of the road, and the slope was not that steep. Then, as soon as that thought crossed my mind, the rear wheel slid out. Startled, I clamped down on the brakes tightly. Was I holding them too tightly? This all filled my head. I think I remember the owner saying something about the break. The owner's warnings that I had listened to half-heartedly raced across my mind. The scooter seemed to regain control for a moment, but the wheels started to fishtail before I could even let out a sign of relief. In the next breath, I was hurled onto the road. I tumbled down as if the scooter had bounced me off as hard as it could. The scooter slid down the road by itself and must be bumped into something else. I loud said. I sprang to my feet. I couldn't afford to check if I was injured or where it hurt. I ran to the scooter, which was on its side under a tree off the right side of the road. It was covered with fallen leaves. I picked it up to discover a deep, unmissable scratch at the bottom of its body. I put the key in and turned it. It didn't start. Sweat rolled down the back of my neck. Every joint in my body ached. I was seized with fear. There was no way I could pay for the scooter. I turned the key again, this time kicking the engine. The engine seemed to rattle and turn over, but died just as quickly. I cursed under my breath, shut my eyes, and kicked the ground as hard as I could. My hand, which held the key, couldn't stop trembling. The faces of my parents and brothers slid by. I looked up into the sky and collected my wits. I clenched and unclenched my fists. Then I turned the key again. The engine finally started up after several attempts. The scooter came alive, sounding like the shrill of a dying animal. I collapsed to the ground. I was drained. The deep scratch was at eye level. I jumped up and rubbed it hard with the toe of my sneaker. It was an old scooter, covered with numerous dents and scratches already. It might go unnoticed. When I stood upright, one of my ankles tingled with pain. Only then did I start to check my own condition. Fortunately, there were no serious wounds. There was a small cut above my left ankle bone that was bleeding. My thighs and waist might ache the next morning, but I'd been there before. Taeyeon watched me park the scooter and step inside the eatery. Did he notice? I grew nervous, but chatted with the owner as casually as possible. The next delivery order came in soon. I had to go out again before I had even warmed up. Hey, Taeyang spoke to me as I approached the scooter. Did he see the scratch? I replied in a deliberately loud voice. What? After some hesitation, Taeyang went on. I have a favor to ask. Favor? What favor? That was when my phone rang. I held out one hand to shush him and turned around. It was Mom. Dad had tried to go outside alone and failed. She asked me to take him to the hospital. I shut my eyes. Anger rose from deep within. I clenched my teeth. I could feel my annoyance slowly surging from my stomach. Snowflakes, now noticeable larger, fell on my face. I was going up and down that slippery road in this weather too, and almost nothing. The cut on my left ankle hurt, and my thighs were burning. But I was setting out to ride the scooter again. It was the only way to earn a little bit of money today. I could understand why he tried to walk alone. It was his last pride as the head of our family and his attempt to keep his dignity as a parent. But we couldn't afford such luxuries in the face of poverty. Dignity, pride, a sense of justice and morals just led to a greater burden and more money to spend. When I opened my eyes, Taeyeon was staring at me. I handed him the key. When Dad and I got off the bus from the hospital, the sun had raised. The light snowflakes from earlier had continued to grow and create snowdrifts. The bus crawled along. It took twice as long as usual to get to the hospital and back home. I was home carrying Dad on my back with no one inside to hold an umbrella for us. My hair was damped, and my hands holding up him were numb with cold. I took a break under the alcova tree, past the road on the embankment. I caught my breath and looked up. A panoramic view of the village met my eyes. The village blanketed under snow appeared tranquil and peaceful. Warm yellow light streamed through the windows of different houses here and there. The smell of steamed rice and stew sharpened my appetite. When we entered the alley after crossing the bridge, dogs started barking. Although we had lived in this village for several months now, the dogs still barked at me like a stranger. Mom sprang up when we came in. He needs to receive outpatient treatment for at least 3 more days. I laid Dad in his room and went outside. Still no sign of the snow letting up. Why do you hate me so much? Let me at least know the reason. I yelled at the dogs, barking their heads off. I heard about Taeyang's accident the next day. When I dropped by the eatery along the street, I saw the owner talking with a police officer. I instinctively froze. I thought he had come for me. I had damaged the scooter on the previous day. I could get in trouble for driving underage and without a driver's license. Should I run back home? But the bus wouldn't come for hours. It wasn't just possible to run away with Dad in his condition. Did you hear? It was the owner of another eatery next door. She said the accident happened when Taeyang was driving downhill after the delivery. His body was just lying there for more than 3 hours until someone in a passing car found him. A resident in the town with the rest area called the eatery owner, but no one set out to find him. The police officer Taeyang was an unskilled driver. He also blamed him for not wearing a helmet. I saw a helmet, which I never seen before, placed on the counter of the eatery. The owner kept saying that he never forced Taeyang to go out delivering and even tried to talk him out of it. It was true. Taeyang and I had insisted that we were okay with it. The name was Old 𝙽𝚘𝚝. It was a small village where everyone knew everyone else. They had at least a memory or two about everybody there, whether it was about a fist fight, backbiting, or betrayal. A series of episodes about him came flowing out. He lived with his mom and sister and had no dad. Taeyang's mom writhed in agony on a bench in front of the eatery and wailed, "Bring my son back, bring my poor, poor son back. It's a wrongful death." At first the neighbors tried to soothe her and wept with her, but it was cold on the sunset area. In the evening, Taeyang's mom was left alone, and the smell of dinner cooking flowed out through the windows as always. Every time wind blew on the trees lining the stream, snow fell in lumps. She just sat there in the middle of it. I saw her sitting alone while I was taking Dad home from the hospital. Without realizing it, I stopped walking and remembered the spot of the accident. After hearing about Taeyang, I had walked along the trail by myself. My breath froze and fell to the ground as ice crystals. Taeyang's shape drawn in a white outline of the road was half erased. I stopped at his feet. Damp leaves were rolling around, and the greatest traces of calcium chloride were still left behind. That could have been me lying there. If I had made that delivery, if it had been me instead of Taeyang, then this would be my outline. It could have been my family wailing on that bench instead of Taeyang's. I bent my steps after Dad coughed violently. Namjoon. Dad called to me when we were about to enter the alley after crossing the bridge. As soon as I slowed my pace, the dog started to bark. Dad continued in a feeble, frail voice. It was hardly audible. Lost amidst the fierce barking, I pretended that I had not heard him. One more week passed. The village quickly returned to normal. Taeyeon's mom sometimes cried bitterly in front of the eatery, but no one shared in her sorrow. People just knocked Taeyeon's sister until she took her away. Some said it was just a traffic accident. I began to work on at another eatery. In fact, I would chat with all deliveries to the village with the rest area. One more heavy snowfall followed, and the trail continued to freeze and the delivery orders were only trickling in out when no one applied to do this delivery job. I made 5 or 6 deliveries a day, and my income increased that much. I always made sure to wear the helmet and protective gear. I never took my eyes off the road with every nerve of attention. Last night I made my last delivery. I didn't know it would be my last at the time, but it was. The rest area closed down for the winter months anyways. When I went up there, people were gathered in the office. They seemed to be discussing the sales of the facility. I didn't recognize some of the faces. They must be strangers who just moved in. While I put down the food and took the money, one of them began to talk about Taeyeon's accident. Another stranger clicked his tongue and mentioned how dangerous it was to ride a motorbike on a snowy day. The stranger who first mentioned Taeyeon's accident warned me to always take a stalker. I thanked him for worrying about me, but I didn't mean it. If he was so concerned about the snow-covered dog and my safety, he shouldn't have ordered food in the first place. Do you know what's really dangerous? The stranger blurted out before I closed the door behind me. Calcium chloride and wet leaves, not the snow itself. Unless you're a very good driver, you'll skid if you step on them. Didn't it snow that day? Then he must. His last words went unheard as the door closed. I cut across the empty, dismal rest area. I passed the narrow snack bar and the local specialty discount counter and headed for the exit. I walked down the stairs one at a time. It was below zero, but it didn't feel like that cold. The key kept slipping from my fingers, and I kept turning it to no avail. I clenched and unclenched my fists. The old scooter rattled like crazy and finally started. I pulled out of the rest area slowly. A curve began at the rest area signpost. I made a right turn in a wide circle, ran down a short straight section, and came to another curve that wound to the left. This was the spot where I slipped first, and then Taeyeon ran into trouble. I kept my eyes forward and rapidly passed the spot. I tried to convince myself that I wasn't taking my eyes off the road to stay safe, but it was guilt. Guilt for surviving alone. Guilt for feeling relieved that I was the one who was still alive. Guilt for not being able to come forward. Guilt for not speaking up to defend his driving skills, for not confessing that I'd never seen a helmet at the eatery. Maybe I was just a hypocrite, pretending to have a guilty conscience. I had scattered the wet leaves on the spot where Taeyeon went down. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I was responsible for all of it. I was the one who sprinkled the calcium chloride with good intentions to prevent the road from icing over. In fact, I did it for myself because I truly believed that I'd make the next delivery and the one after that. Do you know what's really dangerous? What I heard at the rest area replayed in my mind. He must have ridden over it asleep. If I removed the leaves, if I hadn't sprinkled calcium chloride, would he have been saved? Several people were already at the bus stop waiting for the first bus of the day. I nodded my head in greeting and then kept it bent. I tried not to make eye contact with anyone. The first bus of the day came into sight. The bus gradually came to a stop. With my head bent low, I boarded it after the other passengers. I didn't have a specific plan. I was just sneaking away from Mom's exhausted face, from my brother going astray, from Dad struggling against his illness, from our family's fortune going downhill, from my family requiring sacrifice and obedience from me crying to resign my fate, and most of all, from poverty. Poverty eats into the heart of life. It turns what's precious into something meaningless. It makes you give up what shouldn't be given up. It makes you doubt, fear, and despair. Last night, I left the rest area, dropped by the tree, and then went home. I don't remember who I met and what I talked and thought about in between. My entire body and mind felt numb. I couldn't tell whether it was windy, whether it was cold, how it smelled, or who I ran into. My brain seemed to have frozen. I was moving mechanically like a zombie, oblivious of who I am, what I've done, what I'm doing, and what I'm thinking. It was the barking dogs that shook me out of it at the mouth of the alley leading home. In that moment, all my senses, which had been paralyzed, awoke at once, and countless scenes from my past spread out before my eyes. The days of hopping from one place to another, the moment I sleep on the road, me crawling to the interior and competing with the other boys who landed delivery jobs, the boys who laughed at me, and me looking at my peers in the school uniforms waiting for the bus. The sound of the barking dogs and the sight of their threatening eyes filled with hatred were added to these scenes. I almost screamed, "Stop it! What do you want me to do?" But I held myself back. Dad's voice rang in my ears. Dad's feeble, frail voice. I thought of what he had told me that night we came home from the hospital. What I pretended not to hear, but heard clear as a day through the barking of dogs. What I have dwelt on over and over since that day. What I have tried not to think about. Go, Namjoon, you must survive. The bus departed, set to arrive in Sangju a few hours later. I didn't leave a message when I left Sangju 1 year ago. No, I'm returning to the city without any notice. I thought of my friends. I haven't kept in touch with any of them. I wonder what they were doing and if they were still there. I couldn't see outside through the window covered with frost. I slowly wrote on the window with my forefinger, "I must survive."